Hey friend, Graham here from recordingrevolution.com. Today we're talking about how to mix and master your song in under an hour. I'm not joking. I'm a big fan of mixing fast. I'll tell you why in a second and how I approach it in just a second. But this video is actually part 2 of a 2-part mini-series. In the last video, I showed you the 4 steps to start a mix. And this is kind of the pre-mix stuff that if you have an assistant, you're lucky enough to have an assistant and you're a big shot mixer, you have your assistant do this stuff. These 4 things are so critical to every mix. I do it all myself, so I have to be my own assistant. Many of us do. Most of us do. So I want you to watch that video if you haven't already, because that precedes what we're going to talk about here today. Now, if we've done those 4 steps, at this point, you're ready to really dive into the nitty-gritty of mixing, as Nacho Libre would say. So if we want to dive into the details, the stuff that we think about when it comes time to mix, plugins, effects, automation, all that fun stuff, that's great and all, but like I said in the last video, we need to do the 4 steps to start your mix first so that when we get to this point, we can mix very quickly. Because at this point, we've done a lot of the hard work. We should be able to move quickly. We're familiar with the song. We actually have a decent balance up on the faders, but now it's time to jump in. So here's the 4 other elements of a mix. Once you've done the 4 steps to start a mix, when I look at an hour, if I have an hour to mix a song that's been prepped well, then these are the 4 things I'll do. I'm going to focus on the mix bus, the master fader. I'm going to dive into EQ compression on individual tracks statically. Then I'm going to focus on ambient effects like reverbs and delays. Then I'm going to do automation. Those are the 4 in that order. And at the very end, I'm going to show you how to get a master that you could release right now on digital really, really quickly. And that might be a 5th step if you want to add that in at the end. So let's walk through what this looks like. All right. Here's the same track I've been working on. And I've already done a mix. This is an hour mix, and take a listen to what it's sounding like so far.
Keeps us coming back. They don't keep us from being right. One thing's for sure, come payday, we gotta have our country wide.
All right, so it's coming together. Here's how we start. I go to the mix bus. This is where I begin. Once I've got everything routed and everything's balanced volume-wise, which we looked at in the last video, I start with effects on the mix bus, and I've showed you this before. On this mix, I'm just going to show you what I've got. Got the Greg Wells Mixcentric, SSL Master Bus Compressor, and Ozone 8. The Ozone 8 EQ was added at the very end of the mix, so I'd actually mix through this. I added this towards the very end. So really, if I get rid of that for now, I played with these 2 guys to enhance the overall mix at the beginning. So let's just undo everything I've done real quickly. Get rid of the ambient effects, and we'll get rid of everything plugin wise. So here's just the raw balance. Let's get right here. So then what I did was add Mixcentric, which adds a little bit of saturation, EQ, compression, so you can hear what this is doing. Pushes things a little bit more forward, a little bit more brightness. I use it in a subtle way because too much can really, really sizzle it too much. And then a little bit of mix bus compression. This is the Waves SSL mix bus compressor. Love it. If you're going to use any kind of compression on your mix bus, be sure you do slow attack, fast release. Slow attack, fast release. You'll get the most natural sound possible. You won't ruin your mix. And just do 1 to 3 dB of gain reduction. Watch the needle. And makes things pump just a little bit more. So I didn't do a whole lot on the mix bus this mix around, but just these 2 plugins add a little bit of something. A little bit more forward, a little bit more depth, pumps a little bit more. So I will spend, let's say if you have an hour, I'll spend max 10 minutes on this element. Adding EQ, adding compression, sometimes saturation, sometimes tape machines, whatever to enhance the overall mix quickly. And I have some go-tos. So I'll start with those, and if they aren't working, I'll grab something else. The goal being to subtly bring character, clarity, and excitement to the mix quickly with just a couple of plugins, because anything you put on here affects everything else in the mix, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing because it means you could make the mix brighter and more forward with 1 plugin here rather than 20 plugins down here. It means I can do less heavy lifting down here on the individual tracks. So if I have an hour, I'll spend 10 minutes on the mix bus. From there, I'll put my entire mix into mono. I'll flip the whole mix into mono. You got to go watch that video to understand why. And from there, I'll start doing EQ and compression on the individual tracks. So what you'll see in this mix is a lot of the SSL channel. And I kind of mixed through this plugin on every track that needed it as if I were mixing through a console. So it's on my overheads. It's on my bass guitar. It's on my acoustic guitars that are picking. It's on the electric guitars because it's an EQ and a compressor. It's on my vocals. And a lot of tracks don't have any processing, you know. There's minimal on the guitars. The drum, I don't have anything really on the kick drum. I only have 1 on the snare. Nothing on the toms. You know, it's pretty minimal. It's only where I need it, but I'll go through and systematically add EQ and compression. This takes a little bit longer. If you had an hour, I would spend 30 minutes on this. I move quickly. I do it in mono, and I focus on what makes everything pop. Meaning, if I can't hear something, then I'll address it. If I can hear it while it's in mono, with everything else on top of it, I'm fine. I'm mostly just making sure I can hear everything, okay? I want to make sure that I'm not losing something in the mix, because that's the problem, is when you add more tracks, they cover up each other. So we want to focus on EQ and compression to make sure we can hear everything. That's the whole point. I'm not trying to change the sound. You can do that, but I'm not trying to most of the time. I'm trying to make sure I can hear everything. So let's turn on all the EQs and compressors, and you can kind of hear what that's doing.
Keeps us coming back. It don't keep us from being right. One thing's for sure, come payday, we gotta have our country wild. Well, here comes the weekend, calling like a dinner bell. Honky tonks and tailgates, chasing dreams and raising hell, burning it at both ends, crank it up and keep it down. Yeah.
So you hear the drums hit harder. You know, I'm using compression. You hear more clarity on things like the banjo. For example, right there, kind of where we stopped. Let's see, where's the banjo? That's a good example of what I'm trying to do. Here you are, banjo.
hell, burning it at both ends.
So here's the banjo. It's 2 tracks. It's on the left. Such a cool instrument. So that's a nice texture that just comes in and out periodically in this song. And what I found was that without any EQ and compression, I felt like it was getting lost in the mix a little bit. Now, we know it's there because we're zeroing in on it, so we're going to pay attention to it better because that's how audio works. It's all a trick. Our brain is listening for it, so we know it's there. But notice how it's hard to notice much of the banjo when it comes in.
Dreams and raising hell, burning it at both ends. Crank it up and keep it down.
You know it's there, but it is kind of just lost.
And raising hell, burning it at both ends. Crank it up and keep it down.
But when I bring in the EQ and compression,
And raising hell, burning it at both ends. Crank it up and keep it down.
you notice it more, right? And it's just real simple. This is the same setting on both tracks because it's a double. It's EQ is the biggest thing. So I'm rolling off low end just to make sure that I don't need the low end on a banjo. It's a banjo. But I was looking for where is the mid-range frequency that this banjo can live. And what I do is boost like 12 to 16 dB and sweep around with a narrow Q, narrow bandwidth, and listen for where the banjo, while in context with everything else in the mix, the banjo starts to poke its head out. Now, this is extreme because I'm adding a lot of gain, but I'll notice a frequency over another that really makes the banjo come out and show its head, as it were. And so for me, 1.1K was where all of a sudden I noticed the banjo. So I zeroed in on that frequency and I dialed the EQ back to 6 dB, which is, a little more reasonable, 6, 7 dB. And that way I found a frequency that it can live and I can notice it a little bit more. The second thing I do is add a little bit of compression to things like banjo or picking parts where some of the notes will get buried because maybe he didn't pluck that hard. And some, you can see how, dynamic this banjo is. You've got some plucks that are nice and big here and then little ones, right next to it. It's like really lower. So I'm using a compressor here to just even out that, and then has makeup gain to bring up these quieter parts so they're as loud or loud closer to the loud peaks, right? That's the whole point of compression. So I'm using a channel strip real simply just to make the banjo noticeable. Well, let's do that again. Let's just select these 2 tracks, banjo, and I'll get rid of the EQ and compression.
Burning it at both ends. Crank it up and keep it down. Burning it at both ends. Crank it up and keep it down.
Turn it back on.
Burning it at both ends. Crank it up and keep it down.
Right? And it's not just a gain thing. It's not just a volume thing. It's a frequency thing and a dynamics thing. Compressors allow you to hear every pluck, not just the loud plucks when you turn it up or down. So in essence, that's a microcosm of what I'm doing in this 30 minutes of EQ and compression. And if you don't need it, don't add it. If I can hear like this banjo track, or if I can hear this guitar, this 12 string, the 12 string at the very end of the song right here. Like I thought in context with the mix that sat fine. I didn't need anything, so I listened to it and I was like, I can hear the 12 string, move on. Saves you time, saves you plugins, which saves you computer power, which is great. So I'll move on. If I can bust things, like all of these tracks really are playing a similar riff, and they're stacked in different octaves, I just bust them to a new track called Guitar Riff, slap one EQ on there, one compressor on there, and contain them a little bit. So it's because it's really one part. So if the fewer plugins I can use, that saves me time. If I don't need to add any processing, I just move on, that saves me time. And that's how I roll. When I get to vocals, once I get the compression, the EQ right on the lead vocal, I'll just copy the settings over to the backup vocals and then leave it there unless I hear a problem. If I hear a problem, then I'll adjust the EQ for the background vocals or the harmony. Then I'll adjust the compression. But I do, it's not lazy. It's just, I cut my losses. I go for the big wins. I want to mix quickly. And so I move through this section in about 30 minutes. So now we're at 40 minutes in. Now I jump to ambience, and that's where I'll bring in reverbs and delays. And in this case, I have one room reverb, one short slap delay, and then one long affected delay. And they really are a nice touch. The room reverb, I'm just using the stock Pro Tools reverb, the air reverb here. And I have a setting that I start with, I like, called drum room. I grab that preset and I put things in it. And I tuck it down just enough that it gives everything a sense of space. And the slap, I'm using Echo Boy today. And I'm using the Dirty Slap preset, which is a really, really good place to start. I'll roll off some top end, roll off some low end. And I'll put the vocals and the guitars and stuff through that. Listen to what happens when you turn these guys on. Let's get to a section where everyone's kind of in.
Well, here comes a weekend, calling like a dinner bell. Honky tonks and tailgates, chasing dreams and raising hell, burning it at both ends. Crank it up and keep it down.
Right? It's way more interesting with a little bit of room, verb, and slap because it makes things have a sense of space. And I've talked about reverbs and short delays here on the channel recently before, but I'll spend 10 minutes on this ambient section. I have presets, I have go-tos that generally work 90% of the time. Start there. I patch into very similar stuff, very similar plugins, very similar settings, and sometimes it doesn't work, but most of the time it does. That saves me time. And in this case, I routed almost everything, vocals, guitars, drums, to the reverb, and most of those to the slap. And I try to create a sense of space with those. I have one affected delay here that I use the Air multi-delay with her lead vocal. Where are we? She's down here. Later in the song, and I start to gradually bring it in.
Ain't got but one thing to say. I got
Nope.
hell to pay come Monday. Nothing left of this town.
I started to bring in that really affected delay, and she's got it on here.
Tell me, let's get out of my way. I gotta have my country wild.
So I'll have, maybe one of those. It's a different style every time, but if I want to hear an obvious echo or repeat or filtered delay, I'll grab one of those. So we've done 10 minutes of the mix bus, 30 minutes on the individual tracks, 10 minutes on ambient effects, reverbs or delays, give or take. And that leaves us with 10 more minutes. And so that's where I'll go for automation. Automation can really bring a song to life. And I've always done some element of sweetening and automation and peppered throughout a song. When I spent some time studying under Jakir King, that guy is an automation machine. He loves automation, and I saw him spend so much time in automation, percentage-wise, for the mix. I really learned a lot about the art of automation from him. And so I do more than I used to do. The last 3 years, I've done a lot more automation than I did the previous 12, let's say. So what I'm looking for is primarily lead vocal. If I only have time to do one thing, it's going to be lead vocal. And I'm going to ride the lead vocal. If you take a look, you can see all these automation rides, making sure every word pops out and nothing gets swallowed up. And that's all I'm listening for is I'm just riding the fader. I put it in touch mode, and you can use your mouse. You can just click and drive the fader up and down. I did that for years. These days I have a control surface, an Avid Artist Mix, and I'll just put my hand on the fader and ride that. So I'll do lead vocal rides. I'll do drum fill rides sometimes if I need it. I'll do bass guitar rides if I need it. But really, if I have to go in order of importance, I'll do lead vocal and then lead instruments. In this case, it's the little guitar riffs. It's the little banjos that come in and out. I'll make sure they don't lose any of those. So if we look at volume automation, let's see what had automation in this mix. This lead guitar here had automation. That was boring. Little slide stuff like that. That guitar plays a prominent role, like playing around her vocal and call and response. So I made sure that that little guitar poked out where it needed to. The organ, there's a couple places where the organ was getting lost, and I just wrote it up towards the end of the song. Let's see. A couple lead guitar parts here just needed to be straight turned up here. They were a little too quiet. This is going through group track. Those were getting lost in the mix during that section. And there was that organ too. And I'll just go through and be like, oh, I should be hearing this. Oh, I should be hearing that. And if it was a good level for most of the mix, like I call the 85% rule, if the level's good for 85% of the mix, that's a great level. But there's going to be that 15% of the mix where it needs to come up or down. And so that's what I'm listening for. Lead vocal, lead instruments, drum fills if they're getting lost. And if a stray bass note gets too loud or too quiet, I'll do some quick automation, but I don't spend a ton of time, just the places that really are getting buried from time to time. And it really does make a difference because it makes everything heard at all times, and it brings some life into the mix. So I'll spend 10, 20 minutes doing automation on a quick 1 hour mix if I have it. And what that gives me, and there was a little bit of EQ, again, I added at the very end here with Ozone. But what that gives me is just really from the good balance we had, the well-gained, staged, arranged, and good balance, volume, static mix type thing that we did in the setup, it really brings it to life, and you can hear the difference when I take everything away. Right? Clarity, balance, ambience, all of that stuff. That's all happening in that hour. And the reason, if you're wondering why are we trying to mix so fast, why we have to rush, I'm not trying to rush because I'm lazy or I've got other things to do. I'm trying to go quickly because I lose perspective very quickly. I think objectivity, being able to objectively know what sounds good or not, is the hardest thing to maintain as a mixer because our ears get used to what we're hearing. And so we fool ourselves into thinking, yeah, I can hear that. Yeah, that vocal sounds good. Yeah, those drums hit hard, when they don't. Because our ears adapt. Our ears are amazing at that, but that really hurts us as a mixer because we lose that objectivity. The moment you first hear something, you instantly know what it needs. After an hour, you're forgetting. You're getting used to it. You're falling in love with what you're hearing, and that's the biggest thing you could do to ruin yourself, is to fall in love with what you're hearing. You want to always stay objective. So it's hard to stay objective as the time ticks on. You need frequent breaks. You need to listen to your mix on different speakers. You need to listen to reference mixes to wake up your ears. So I try to mix quickly so that I'm making correct decisions, not like finding myself 3 hours deep tweaking that banjo like crazy in solo, realizing that I've just completely lost perspective. So that's the goal for mixing quickly. Now, I promised you that we could mix and master a song in an hour. So when I say master, what I mean is I'm assuming you are mixing your own material and you want to release this digitally. I've got a video on how to mix a song in 60 seconds or less. And the whole thing here is, if you've done your job as a mixer, you shouldn't need to do anything else to it sonically other than get the level right to release it. Okay? Some people disagree with me on that, but the truth is, a recording that's recorded perfectly shouldn't really need to be mixed. And a mix that's mixed perfectly shouldn't really need to be mastered. That's the way I think about it. So when I'm mastering my own material, I try to mix in such a way that there's nothing left to do in mastering. And if you're not going to hire somebody else out for their ears or their perspective, which is a benefit of mastering, I believe, having someone else's like ears on it, again, objectivity. But if you're not going to do that and you just want to release your own music, then all you need to really worry about after hopefully a good mix is level. And we can do that with a simple limiter. So if we grab the Avid Maxim, all I will do here is generally grab the ceiling down minus half a dB, minus a dB. And what we're going to do is press play on the loudest part of the song and start to pull the threshold down. And that's going to raise the overall volume of the mix up. Okay? I've done a whole video on this, so I'll let you go watch that one. But this is all it does. You can do this in literally 60 seconds. What you're going to be listening for is the level increasing. What you're going to be looking for is on this limiter in particular, it's called attenuation. You might see gain reduction or GR. That's the meter that tells you how much are you actually turning down the peaks of the loud stuff. And this is going to be probably your kick drum, your snare drum, maybe the bass, depending on how hot it's mixed. That's the thing to tell you if you're in the danger zone. If you see that slamming down on stuff or not releasing on stuff, then you're really going to know that you're squashing your mix too much. Your goal here is just to get more level without squashing the life out of it. You are going to have to turn down some of the peaks a little bit. But again, 1 to 3 dB of turning down the peaks on the loud part of the song is not too much compression in my mind with a limiter, and you're gonna get a lot more gain. So I'm not gonna do this in this video, but that's exactly how you do. You start to pull the threshold down, watch the attenuation, and you'll get that gain up. Go watch the How to Master Your Song in 60 Seconds video to see that in action. But you can do this literally at the very end of a 60-minute mix, a 1-hour mix, and it can be more commercially viable loudness-wise, and you'll be ready to release it on your favorite streaming platform. That was a lot, but that's because I wanted to show you all the things that are happening in a quick 1-hour mix. And this mix is an example of that. Like I said, I did the setup stuff beforehand, and then everything you heard plugin-wise, automation-wise, was done in about an hour. Now, some songs take longer. Some songs you need to come back to and reference and listen on more speakers, but the bulk of the decision-making can be done in an hour. The bulk of the plugin settings can be done in an hour. If you move quickly and if you've prepped it well, and you've done steps 1 through 4 on how to start your mix that I showed you in the last video, you should be good to go. Now, if you want more ideas on the mastering process, finishing this, getting this song to be radio ready, as I call it, real ready to release, I want to make sure you grab my radio ready guide, because mastering is one of these 6 steps that I talk about in this guide. And I go into a bit more depth there on how I view and approach mastering. So it's my 6 steps to a radio ready song, quick PDF, easy read. You can download it right now at radioreadyguide.com. I'll put the link here so you can see it in the video. It's also in the description box if you want to click it. Just go ahead and download that, pull it open. If you're ready to master and release your song, you can skip to step 6, which is mastering, and get that ready to go. I would recommend, though, take the time to read the whole thing. It's not too long because I know you're busy. I'm busy. Walk through all 6 steps so you know what they are. So the next time you're ready to write a song and do it from scratch, you don't skip any of the elements that will make your song sound as good as it possibly can. So you'll know what they are, what the order is, and then also some of my biggest tips, golden nuggets, and tricks for each step I've included inside the guide. So it's just a handy reference for you. If you're going to be a student of mine in any capacity, even if you've just watched one YouTube video, I'd rather you have this guide in your hand than not, because it really will serve you well no matter what kind of music you're working on. If you never watch one of my videos again, it's fine. Take the guide, use it. It will help your music. And it's all for free at radioreadyguide.com is my gift to you. Thanks for watching. Leave me a comment. Let me know, do you mix songs this quickly? Have you done a 1-hour mix? If so, how did it turn out? What was your biggest takeaway from having to mix under the time pressure of 60 minutes ticking away? And yeah, let's get a discussion going in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Have a great music making week, and we'll see you on another video real soon.